Great to have you back on the show. Good to see you. Let's start with Apple. Let's start with Apple and the fact that we are closing in on a $3 trillion market cap. Does this run continue here?
I think Apple is as well positioned as any tech company in America. You know, the thing that they have done better than anyone else is control their supply chain and hardware. And, you know, the new chips, the ones that they designed, are groundbreaking. You know, from Apple's perspective, the challenges they face are the same that the other big tech companies face, which is to say regulation, potential antitrust action. But in Apple's case, the potential impact of those things is much smaller. So I think Apple's situation is just really terrific right now, as long as you like the market.
Yeah, how do you balance that? And I ask that because I know Apple just did win this delay in this monopoly case where its App Store is concerned, but certainly still getting a lot of that scrutiny, not just here in the U.S., but abroad. But it does also focus very heavily on privacy. We've seen the impact of that on other companies, for example, Meta and advertising companies and the like as well. So how do you balance those two with each other?
So Apple's been put in this really awkward situation where effectively it is the privacy regulator in the United States. They don't like being in that position, and yet for their business, they have to be there because privacy is their brand. And the big challenge they face in the short run is that the way they structured the new privacy tools that are in iOS, they have essentially a way to tell people, don't track me, but it doesn't actually prevent app vendors from circumventing Apple's rules. And so Apple's next challenge is, what does it do about that? Because I think consumers rightly expect Apple to take care of them on privacy, and Apple has a big challenge there from a PR point of view. I don't think that's going to get in the way of the business in the near term because the alternative is Android, and Android has no protection at all.
So I did just mention Meta, which is the company formerly known as Facebook, which also owns Instagram. We saw Adam Mosseri, the head of that division, testify on the Hill yesterday. I mean, privacy, a huge focus there, and certainly it seems to be a bipartisan push against this company, although we haven't necessarily seen anything meaningful in terms of policies or regulations. If you had to give him a grade for that testimony yesterday, what would it be?
F.
Really?
No, it's really,
okay.
Yeah, it's really, here's the reason why, okay? So Mosseri's out there saying yesterday, please regulate us. However, simultaneously in Europe, where the General Data Protection Regulation is supposed to provide a relatively low standard of privacy, and in California, where the California Computer Privacy Act does something very similar, Facebook is contending that those laws do not apply to it. So on the one hand, Mosseri is saying, please regulate us. But on the other hand, they're saying, okay, the regulations exist, but we're going to pretend like they don't apply to us. And, you know, that is just Facebook being Facebook. And again, from an investor point of view, the regulators are doing a terrible job, right? The enforcement isn't good. In the United States, we're just not moving forward quickly enough. So from an investor point of view, Facebook at the moment is, you know, in the clear. It can say what it wants because no one punishes them for saying one thing in one context and a different thing in another. No one punishes them for undermining our response to COVID. No one punishes them for being involved in the insurrection. You know, so from their point of view, this is working out great.
Hey, Roger, from the world of keen sense for the obvious, I spent a lot of time here talking about the simple size and scale of these companies. And frankly, given how long I've been doing this, and I assume you share this, just the numbers themselves are staggering. I mean, whether it's $3 trillion almost for Apple's market cap, or $2.5 trillion for Microsoft, or $2 trillion for Alphabet, and almost that as well for Amazon, the actual financial performance is as staggering as those numbers are. Is there anything you can point to in the history of sort of capitalism in the United States that is a similar time where we've had just the scale and power of these kinds of platforms and companies?
I mean, David, obviously not in our lifetime. You know, the Standard Oil Trust and the other trusts at the beginning of the 20th century had roughly an analogous impact on the economy. And certainly they had similar levels of control of the economy. But what's going on now is different because these companies are also influencing our politics, and they're doing so on a global basis. And that, I think, is unprecedented. And as we look at it today, you know, the world has a choice to make right now because these companies are doing something very powerful, but it's really driven by a focus on efficiency. And countries like the United States were founded on democracy and on the right of self-determination. Those two things are inefficient by design. So when companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon get to nation scale, their value system conflicts with the prevailing value system of the countries they're operating in. And that creates a political crisis, which is exactly what we have going on in this country. And, from an investor point of view, the stocks are so well positioned because the country's response to their success has been to just sit back and watch it.